Okay, I'm going to hit the button. Here I go, and then I'll mute, and then you can just, there it is.
Well, hello and welcome everybody to this live Record Power event in association with our partner Steve Fulgoni and his team at the Woodturning store in New York. So this is a live Ask Record Power event where we do a deep dive focus into various Record Power products. Today we're going to take a look at the Record Power Coronet Herald Woodturning Lathe. And to do that, we've got mate Craig Heffren over in the UK. But before we get into all of that, let's do some introductions. So my name's Mike, Mike Davis. I'm part of the Record Power team. I'm based over in the New Zealand office, where today it is just gone 6:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning. And isn't technology an amazing thing? Because I'm soon going to introduce you to Steve Fulgoni over in New York, where it's 2:30 on a Wednesday. And then we're going to go and meet Craig Heffren over in Chesterfield in the UK, where it's 7:30 on Wednesday evening. So right, well let's make a start by introducing Steve. So here we go. We're going to bring in Steve, and this is Steve, our partner in the USA at the Woodturning store. How you going, Steve?
Hey, Mike, how are you? So thank you. My name is Steve Fulgoni, and I'm the owner of the Woodturning store here in New York. And we are so proud to be a Record Power dealer here in the US, and also so happy to present our first live stream together with Record Power. Our website is thewoodturningstore.com right up here, and we're here and happy to help you answer any questions during this live stream through the chat or afterwards by phone. And of course, we are here if you'd like to purchase any Record Power product. So thanks again, Mike, and I'll pass it back to you.
All right, well, that's brilliant. And thank you, Steve, for hosting this. It is our first live session, one we hope of many with you. So now let's jump over to the UK. So is this going to work for us, Steve? Let's bring in Craig. How you going, Craig? So Craig's part of the Record Power team. He's based in Chesterfield in the UK, 7:30 p.m. So how long have you been with the company, Craig?
Well, if we were doing this when I started, it'd probably be in black and white. About 1989 when I first started. I'd just finished an apprenticeship at another company and I went to Record. So we've seen a few lathes in our time. But like you said, we're here today to show you the Record Coronet Herald. So I know you've got Steve over in New York who's going to be answering your questions, and yourself, Mike. So make sure you make yourself known to us. Keep us busy. Ask us whatever questions you want and we'll do our best to show you the machine.
All right, well, that's it. And before we go too much further, we've got to do a shout out to our mate who's behind the scenes, Ollie. So Ollie is supporting Craig. He's on the camera. And with Ollie's fine camera work, hopefully we're going to be able to show you some details around the Herald. So look, before we kick off and throw it over to Craig, as we've mentioned, it is live, it is interactive. So this is an opportunity really for you to ask questions. I'm going to be monitoring questions in the chat. So you'll see on your YouTube, you've got a chat option. Type your questions in there. We'll be watching out. If it's product related, at an opportune moment, I might jump in and stop Craig and say, hey, Craig, hang on a sec. We've got Tom from Texas who's got a question on XYZ. And with Ollie, he will be able to zoom in and show you all of the information that we want so we can answer your product related questions. If it's a supply, pricing, lead time kind of thing, Steve will be there to answer your local questions on product supply and so on. Okay, so I reckon that's it from us. Steve, we're going to jump into the background. It's going to be over to you, over to you, Craig. So I'm going to put myself into the background. If I can do this, remove spotlight. Steve, we'll catch you later. And it's over to you, Craig.
Thanks for that, Mike. Great introduction. Like Mike said and Steve said, any questions you've got, put them in the chat. We'll be more than happy to pass your information or your questions on to me, and hopefully we can answer all your questions. But the idea behind today is really so a lot of you will have seen the machine on the advertisements, on the websites and things like that, but it's sometimes difficult to get a scale of what we're actually looking at. Now, the idea behind the Coronet Herald, when you're looking at it, as you'll see here, it's in the basic format, where you've got the tailstock, the banjo, the headstock with the motor. But the idea behind this machine is that you can sort of have it this size, and it's got the legs and the foot mounts on there, and we'll go through the spec later with that. And you can put it to a maximum. And to do that even more so, we've got a bed extension here. And the bed extension, when you're looking at that, gives you this extra distance between centers, so it'll bolt on to the end there, and obviously we can run the tailstock through. But the good thing about this, rather than just bolting the bed extension on, if you look at the fittings on the end of it, which I'll try and get on the overhead camera, what you'll see is you've got two clearance holes, so the bottom left, top right in my case, then you've got the drilled and tapped holes, top left and bottom right. So the clearance holes, we call it Katie corner. So you'll be bolting through the actual bench itself this way, and then through the bike, the clearance holes into the drilled and tapped holes in the bed itself. And that gives you a bit of clearance and alignment. So what you'll do is you'll put the casting on there and just nip the bolts up. And then what you can do is just draw the tailstock over the bike, clamp it up, which will lift the bed extension to the correct position. When it does that, then we can nip the bolts up, get it nice and tight, and that allows you a nice slide, a nice feel when you're going across, not a lumpy one where it's going to go in stages. The idea behind this is obviously to keep the bed as clean as possible, but you're going to get the stains on it from your polishers and your finishers. It is grey cast iron, and grey cast iron is a great sort of material to work with, and it'll clean down nicely. What I do to keep mine clean is use a bit of white spirit, use what we call a scratch pad, which all your wood turners will be aware of, and we can just clean all the stains off, and then just use a bit of wax to keep it so that the machine actually, or the tailstock and headstock, run really smoothly. What I said before is if we take the tailstock and the headstock to a maximum on this, between the centers, when we've got it out to a maximum, so the maximum between centers is 508mm, which is around 20-inch. Obviously, when we add the bed extension to that and you put it up, it's another 16-inch extension on there. So obviously it gives you up to about 33¼ between centers if you're using the bed extension. And what you're looking at is, if you're thinking you're doing a table leg, or a lot of people use the sort of banjos when they're making them, that easily accommodates that. You need a minimum of 32-inch to sort of get your knees underneath the table. So obviously it'll allow you to do that. But one of the great points I think about this, if you start doing your pen turning or your smaller items, what's the good thing about the Coronet Herald is we can squeeze everything in. You'll think now you've got this on a bench rather than the legs. We've come really tight in. We've got no overhang there. And we're taking up very little space. So on your bench top, you're going to allow to do your smaller work, and you're not going to be impeding and taking a lot of room up in your workshop. But at the same time, if we extend and put the bed extension on, it does allow you to sort of do the longer stuff on your spindle work. And as you can see this machine here, if you take a shot, Ollie, from the front camera, you can see we've got these parts here are what we call the foot mounts. And then we've got the legs underneath that. We've got both on just to show you. And obviously, if you do put both on, it does lift the height a little bit. Now, I'm aware we do everything in metric here, but obviously we've got the inches that we can do it for. So if you went just the basic machine, you're looking at about 48 kgs weight-wise. So there's no sort of extra weight. It's going to easily fit on a bench. So from floor to the center with just the legs alone on there, what we're looking at, but you've got to be comfortable when you're doing it and make your mind up on your heights as you're doing that. So from floor to the center with just the legs on itself, again, you're looking about 43-inch. If you put the bench feet on at the same time, you're looking about 45¼ and just so you know, if you go from the floor to the underside of the bed, if that's on, you're looking about 35¼ something like that. So it's a nice machine that's actually got loads of potential within itself. It's a number 2 most taper on tailstock and on headstock. And in our instance, in the UK and around Europe, we're looking at an M33 thread. But obviously, when you're in the US, we've got the inch 8 available as well as a direct thread. So you can see there on ours, this is M33, but inch 8 and inch 1/4 8 is available on that. This comes as standard, which is the faceplate ring, which doubles up as a thread protector. And then you get the 4-prong drive as standard, like I said, number 2 most taper. If you go across to the tailstock, again, as standard, you get the ring center, rotating center. And if we just lock off there, as you draw that bike, obviously it's self-ejecting tailstock in there. And we just put that back in, make sure it seats nice and secure. Now, when it comes to bowl work, the maximum bowl that we'd like you to do on here, over the bed, you've got potential for doing 14-inch. But the advantage of this particular machine is we've got the swivel head option. So we can even take that right up to the center if we like, rotate it round. We'll go through the accessory in a bit, rotate that round, and then we can lock that back off. And you hear the clicking noise as it goes through into your different positions. But if you want to go in between, we can still lock off in between. And you get yourself comfortable. Now, you imagine you're just doing a small goblet or something like that. You don't have to take the headstock all the way around, but at the same time, you're not going to be leaning over the bed to get into the goblet when you're doing it. You've actually opened your workshop up. So instead of leaning over now, we've got the headstock facing us. We can pick the bowl up or the spindle up, put this in position. We've actually opened all the workshop up and there's nothing in our way when we're doing that. It just makes for a more comfortable turn. There's nothing worse than having to lean over something with the fixed heads all the time, trying to look inside as you're doing it. It's going to be uncomfortable when you're doing that. So it is a great option to do that. If you do want to spin the head all the way around, if you're doing the bigger work, now if you are doing the larger diameter bowls, and we'll throw one on later, just to show you the sort of size, this will spin all the way around. We can put the banjo on this side, or we can remove the banjo. Probably if I'm doing a bowl, I'd remove the banjo and put it to the left-hand side, and then take the tool rest out of the way for now. Bring the outrigger in, then that gives us the full support in front of the bowl when we're doing that. So that is one of the accessories. We showed you earlier on the bed extension, which is the second accessory. You might have just seen, as we're looking, we've got the emergency stop here, which is magnetized, and that can be put in any position when we're doing as bowl work over the other side. So any issues at all, we've got that in position just to stop the work and check it and make sure nothing untoward's happened. Like I said before, we've got the legs and we've got the bench feet. That's a choice. If you look at the legs, and a lot of people like to know this, if you look over it and you look at the footprint of the legs splay out 1250 across the front and about 700 millimeters across, which is about 49.25 inch by 27.5 inch. So that's the sort of space you want with the basic legs on, which again doesn't take up that much room, but it does make the machine. Yeah.
I've just got a question in from Fiona, who was wondering, because you're on the subject of the legs. Now, you've mentioned the weight of the machine. It's a very heavy and sturdy machine. It's got a good splay with the legs. But Fiona was questioning, what if you wanted to make it heavier? Could you fill the legs with some, you know,
when we've designed the legs, this was something we took into consideration, because a lot of the time, no matter who you are, you always want to do whatever size you think you're going to be doing on bowl work or whatever it is. You always end up wanting to do something bigger. And like I said, if we're doing a bowl work on here, we've got around a maximum of 21 inch that we recommend. You will get away with a little bit bigger, but it depends on the balance of the timber when you're first starting. But we're aware that wood at first is out of balance. If you did take the legs off, Fiona, there's a small cap, a small plastic cap in the top. And what I did early on, we had our own foundry years ago, and I got a couple of bags of shot, as I call it, or sand or something like that, and you can pour that in and it'll just drain down to the bottom, and it makes the legs sort of 2x, 3x the weight that they are and gives you that bit more stability. I've really found that, we were talking earlier, Mike, and I've just come back from the wood turning cruise on the fjords, and we'll try and post some pictures up later, but we actually had the sun deck, and we had 4 of these on the sun deck doing lessons, and we didn't have the shotting, we didn't have the weighting, and they weren't actually bolted down at all, and we're doing bowl work and goblet work, and they never murmured. They actually just stayed stable, and it was noted on. And the reason behind that, Fiona, is because as part of the design, the legs are splayed outwards and outwards. So if you look at that shot, thanks Ollie, that's great. If you look at that shot that we've got there, you can see that they're actually facing outwards, but then a slight angle that they're facing sort of out this way as well. So any weight we put on the machine makes it more stable and makes for the stability for when you're turning a lot better, and you get very little vibration when you're doing that as well. So yeah, good question. Thanks for pointing it out. I probably would have forgot, but now you've said it, everybody else knows, which is what this is all about. So we spin that bike around, and what's happening here is I'm spinning that round, I'm loosening off, and if you just go to the overhead shot, Ollie, you can see this little, I can find it for you. There's a little bar that I shoot in here, and I just turn that 45 degrees and it locks the headstock back off in any position we want. So it's easy to slide, it's easy to secure. So we've talked about the faceplate ring that doubles up as a thread protector, the 4-prong drive, and the revolving center on a 2-most taper. When we open up the lid on here, what we see is the workings of the machine, which is the main bit. And I know 1 or 2 people have already asked questions on this. So if I move it over to about there for the overhead shot, lock it down in position, what you'll see is a 3-step pulley. Now we've got it on middle speed at the moment. Now it might be hard to pick up. I'll just zoom in a little bit. You can see the light on here. We're on, there's 1, 2 and 3. So we're on number 2 slot here, which means on this pulley, on the middle pulley, we can go from 140 RPM right up to 1,868, which is the middle speed. Now, this is like being in the right gear in your car, because if we went to pulley, the nearest one to the motor, which is the fast speed, low torque, the middle one you're going to be on majority of the time, I would say 75 to 80% of the time, you're probably going to be on the middle pulley, which takes you, like I said, from 140 up to 1,868. And then you've got the high torque, low speed, which is the one for the bigger bowl work, the 21-inch bowl. And if you went to that one, what you've got on that one, it takes you from 95 up to 1,055. But obviously, the way to change it over is if you just loosen off on the lever there, you bring the motor towards you, that loosens the belt off. Once we loosen the belt off, then we can go higher or lower. So if we go to that one, drop it down, and all you need is the weight of the motor. The important bit on this is making sure, because it's a poly V belt, what that is a multitude of V's. When I first started with work, you'd be looking at sort of V belts, but what a poly V belt does, it absorbs any vibration. So it gives you the width, but it gives you a load of little V's which actually absorb any vibration that's going through it and makes for a better grip and a smoother running machine. So like I've just done there, just the weight of the motor, we lock back off. You then can put that to the 3, which is the faster speed. You'd shut the lid, and as we turn on then, you can go all the way through up to the top speed of 3,890. And then all the way back down. The advantage of that is any speed that we stop at. So at the moment here now we're looking at, I'll take it up to about sort of 1100. We can stop that. And then if we start back up, it will come back up to that speed. So you just have a quick glance, look what speed you're at. People go on about the readouts. A lot of the time, people don't actually look at them because you know you're at the right speed with the balance of the timber. And you can tweak it 10 RPM one way or 10 RPM the other way. What you'll find is you turn in a bowl blank and you might feel like you're struggling a little bit. But if you're on a standard pulley, a 5-step pulley, you move up to the next pulley, but that'd be too fast for it. The advantage with the variable speed is we can just go up to where you're getting that vibration. Sometimes 5 RPM more and you'll lose the vibration. So we take that off. Like I say, easy job to do. Just go over and we can put that back to the center pulley or the end pulley. I always go to the center on a standard. It covers the multitude of sins with sizes that we're doing. Weight of the motor, lock back off. Just rotate it. Make sure it's sitting nicely in the poly V's. You're not overriding. The worst thing you can do is not have it centralized correctly. And you don't want to rip the poly V's. If you put the belt on incorrectly and it's over one way, sometimes after a time it'll wear that V on it and then you'll never get the belt to settle. So just rotate it by hand, make sure it's sitting right. We go back to number 2. If you go overhead, or if we go back to number 2 on that one, start it up. And there you are, we're going from up to 1,860 as we go through it. Then we stop. But while we're in the overhead, obviously a lot of time now people like to go in reverse, and this has got that facility as well, whether it's for sanding or for whatever operation you're doing. If you want to go in reverse, it's a bit of on this machine itself, it's a bit of a safety issue because you don't want to go in reverse by mistake. So you can see on the top here, it says belt ratio 1, 2, 3, on, off, emergency stop, and your isolator. This is your control. If we press and hold the reverse, what you'll see is the flashing light. Then you hear the beep. Then the light, the red light, stays on in reverse. So when we start the machine up then, it automatically goes in reverse as you're doing that. When we stop the machine, it'll slow down to a stop, but the machine has actually gone back to the forward action. So we can't go in reverse by mistake. It can't be done, because if you're going to go in reverse, all the accessories that come with this, if you can see there, this one's got a drilled and tapped hole. And when you get the machine, or you get one of our chucks, you get a little leather washer and a grub screw. So that's the red leather washer. You can do that without dropping it. And a small grub screw, because you're going to go in reverse, you want to secure them. And it's same with the chucks. When you buy the Record chucks, what you'll see is a hole down the side, or in this instance, on the insert, where you've got the drilled and tapped hole. You can drop the leather washer down, turn on, and that makes sure it's secure while you're running in reverse. So I hope that's all right. If you have any questions on that, put them in the chat and we'll go back to it. So 1, 2, and 3 on your pulleys, adjustment there for testing. The other thing we're looking at, while you can see in that position, is the index in here, because you've got a 24 index, and this lever on top, I don't know if we'll pick that up on the top shot. So that's the one there. So if we put that into the slot and rotate, it's going to click in. It clicks into position. You can see the numbers on here, and we've also got it, if the lid's shut, we've also got the viewer on here that you can look down through, and you can see the numbers we're on. Now, a lot of people are into the indexing. Quick way for anybody who's not sure how to do it. Imagine you're turning a clock face and you want 12 evenly spaced holes that you want to drill in. You can put your timber on there. Because this has got 24 positions on there, every 2 you'll click in, you'll mark it off, move it another 2, click in, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, all the way through, and you'll have 12 evenly spaced marks that we can then drill. If you're doing a clock, we could put sort of a darker wood into a lighter wood and embellish it that way. So that's the indexing. What I will say while we're on this is, don't use the indexing plunger as your lock for your spindle. There's 2 reasons why. When we lock that in place, it's actually on a taper. So the taper drops in to the indexing and gives you a nice solid, there's no movement or very little movement at all in that when you're going through, because of the taper. And if there's any wear on it, the taper will take care of it. If you start sort of trying to knock your actual chucks off and things like that using that, there's every chance you're going to damage it. What we do with the Coronet Herald is, if you look at the back, if we go to the overhead shortly, you'll see the little hand wheel here. The hand wheel's got a dual purpose. One, if you've got a finished product, you can turn the hand wheel by hand to inspect your work. You're not actually handling your wood and staining it up or marking it. You're turning this way and inspecting it. If you look closer, there's 2 holes drilled all the way through, and we get this Tommy bar which doubles up to lock the headstock in place, but also drop through these 2 holes. It goes down and locks in position, and that secures the spindle in place and allows you to take everything off there without damaging it.
Actually, Craig, so we had a couple of questions in from Mike, and it was in connection to removing. He was saying that he's got an SC4, and he finds that if it sticks, it's difficult to remove. He was saying that his hand wheel was coming loose, but I suspect, as you've pointed out, number one, that we definitely wouldn't use the indexing indentations to remove the chuck. But I think what Mike might be doing is not locating it through the hand wheel, and at that bottom there's I don't know whether you can show that extra.
I'll just spin this round so we can see it. Obviously the camera's not picking everything up.
You got it.
It's a better angle now. So we drop down there, and we drop behind the stem, which is the marker for locking the headstock up, and that'll stop it moving.
There you go.
If you're having that trouble, sorry, who was the gentleman that said it? Mike.
Mike, yeah.
If you drop that in, so you lock the headstock off, make sure it's nice and solid there. You drop the headstock, drop the bar down there. I'll take this one off for now, so it comes off quite easy. Just knock the centre out with the bar as well. That's the 4-prong centre. Take this one off. Now, if you're using the SC4 chuck, for instance, or on that one, and we put that on there, when you buy your SC4 chuck, you might be aware of it, you might not, but you will be in a minute. Got the drawer in here with the bits on. You will also receive this spanner with the chuck as well. Now, there's 2 operations that this does. One, you can actually lock it round. You've got that locked in position. You can put that on. I'll try and get in a better position for you to see. That goes around the actual chuck and on the jaws. You can see that. That's what it's positioned for. So then that allows you, once it's stuck on, you can put that in there and just give it a quick crack with the palm of your hand. And the other side of it is for putting on and removing the actual inserts that we got. So if I just take that off and try and show you a little bit better from the overhead. This one goes around the jaws there, like that, and allows you to lock it off. And then the insert on the SC4, it goes around that one, so you can take that in and out with it as well. That's a better angle for it. So that's the spanner for it. So if you're having that trouble, Mike, and you've got that stuck on, block off with the Tommy bar, and then use the spanner that you've got with your jaw. I mean, a lot of people, and I don't recommend it, they do go into the jaws and lock it that way, but obviously that's at some point you're going to damage your jaws doing that. So it is better to use the correct tools if possible. I've seen people where they've put sort of little leather washers on and things like that, but part of the tolerance when you're using a record chuck and a record lathe, you've got the thread. In this instance, it's the M33. Obviously, in America, we've got the inch 8. We don't actually, all the thread is for putting the chuck on there and getting it on. The location points are the points on the spindle around here. This is what we clock up. And if you look inside the insert of a chuck, you'll see you've got the thread, but it actually locks up to the face. So over time, you'll get a little bit of wear on the thread. It doesn't really matter. That's just going to be the location. They're actually going to pick up on these faces. So that's where the accuracy comes from, not relying on the thread. If you went to a cheap sort of lathe and you just see a thread on there all the way to the end, that's why you have the problem, because you're just relying on the thread to go on. As soon as you get a little bit of wear, you're going to get the movement on it as well. So make sure these faces are kept clean on the chuck and actually on the lathe itself, and you'll be okay. So thanks for that. That's thrown me completely now, Mike. What were on?
Yeah, where were we? Oh, never mind. You'll be all right.
Yeah. So, like I said, we've gone through the workings of it. We've gone through the emergency stops on both the isolator and the on-off as we're doing that. When you come to do your work, obviously we've got a selection of jaws and accessories that you can buy. I don't know if Ollie just wants to spin round and show. I know you can just about see them from here, but we've got the full range of chucks that we produce, and I'm using the SC4 at the moment, which is that one that goes in there. And with the SC4, you get the 50mm jaw, the faceplate ring, the wood screw, and obviously you need to choose the insert to suit your lathe. In your instance, you're looking at the inch 8, as well as the spanner that we've just been using for taking the insert and the chuck on and off the lathe. The SC3 is the same package really, but obviously we do this in a direct thread. So you can have it in the inch and 8 thread, you get the faceplate ring, the wood screw, and the 50mm jaws. And then obviously all the chuck keys to go with it and the screws that you're attached to. Then we've got the SC2 and SC3. Again, you get the dovetail jaw as standard with the wood screw, and then you've got a choice of 4 other jaws. I know I mentioned earlier, we've just been on the cruise, and the most popular one was the SC1 with the correct insert, and then a lot of people were doing the sort of smaller work with these dome jaws that we've got. which just make it safer for you to, I'm trying to find the camera that we're on. We're just trying to make it safer. So that's just one of the dome. If you go to the overhead, that's one of the dome jaws there. So if you're doing the smaller work, obviously it stops you cracking your knuckles when you're doing the work. And they prove very popular with the finials and everything else like that. So that's the range of chucks that we're probably going to have another session on. But for today, we're just going to be using the SC4. And I know Steve mentioned to us earlier that what we want to get across really is how much torque this machine's got, because it's got a 0.75 or 0.75 kilowatt brush. It's a DC motor. So it's got a 1.1 input and a 0.75 output. So that's what you're getting from the actual end of that. And it does allow you to do the bigger work. If I put the thread protector back on, shut the lid, and we can put the 4-prong drive in. If we take that back to its maximum for now. And we'll throw a bowl one in a minute, but I just wanted to show you, if we just put a decent piece of timber on there, we can come up with the tailstock. Lock off, can squeeze that into position. Just make sure the headstock's locked. Lock that down. Just make sure we're on the lower speed. And then you pick your speed that you're looking at. Obviously, we can look at just the roughing gouge. We're on the middle speed, and we're just going to take the corners off really when we're doing it. And all I've done there is just sort of rested on, always tucked in to the side here, always on the tool rest, and then just rub on the bevel as you're doing that. As you bring your backhand up, you'll start to find the cut. And you can just carry on taking it from square to round. You can see we're taking a nice shaving, a nice chipping off there as we're doing it. You can just increase the speed slightly. We're up to sort of 1100 there. And you can see straight away we're getting a nicer shaving and a nicer cut. Just keep checking. Just turn the tool over on its side to get a slightly nicer finish. Take that along. And it's not going to even struggle with anything on a decent size. If you're wanting to put a bowl blank on there, what we can do, we can just remove this. And this is where the chuck comes in. What I did earlier, and all I've done earlier, is I've just put the faceplate ring, just screwed that as central as I can to the bowl blank, just 4 basic screws. And then the advantage of that is the 50mm jaw that you get with the SC3 and SC4 as standard actually just sits straight in there, opens up, and because it's got the dovetail, it secures it up straight away. So all we'd do normally is we could take this off, knock the centre out. Resisting doing that. I'll just mount this up first. See how it's gone tight. Is there any more questions coming up, Mike, at the moment?
Yeah, there's a couple. So hold on a sec. We've got, what's the dimension of the tool post?
That's 1 inch.
So
1 inch stem, and then you get the 8 inch. You get the 8 inch tool rest as standard with that.
All right, now that's good. So the other question was, do you know the diameter of the hole through the spindle?
That's me one I know the answer to. Yeah, I'll quickly measure that for you. Because this is the standard Tommy bar that you get with it. And obviously that goes straight through. So you're looking about 10 millimeter.
Right.
I will double check that for you though before we've gone. You're looking about 10 millimeter to knock that straight through, yeah. All
right, Steve, and I don't know whether you want to pop that in the chat translated to imperial for
you're looking at 3/8 it is if it's 10 millimeter.
I was going to get out my calculator, Mike.
Yeah.
3/8.
All right, so I got that one. I got another question for you from Walter Herring. G'day, Walter. Now, Walter was saying that on occasion his cam lock on the tool rest is working loose. How can we fix that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up because I had the same issue at the last demonstration that we did when we were over in Norway. And like I said, we got 4 of these machines on the sun deck, but we got 6 of them in the training room. And there were quite a few of, Terry Gerris, I don't know if he's listening to this, he said he might come on. He was running the training room and doing the bookings and everything. And one morning he said, what happening is as you're pressing the handle down, it was springing or trying to spring back up, basically. So he was locking it down and it felt like it was trying to spring back up. And it's quite simple how to do this because if you take the tailstock off, I've been able to take the tailstock off because when it comes as standard, there's a little screw that's in this plate here. I don't know if you can see that. And that stops the tailstock, allowing the tailstock to come all the way off as a safety aspect. You can take that out if you wish, so you can just remove the tailstock like I've just done without sort of taking it on and off. But just be aware of it, that it will come all the way off. Now, that allows you then to take the banjo off. Now, if you look underneath here, it works on a cam, but you can see the faces that we've got in here. And what happens is they get bunged up, if you like, if that's the right phrase that we understand in New York as well. They sort of get, with the shavings and the oils and the finishes that you do, it gets a layer of muck on top of there. So it's not trapping between the machine face underneath on the bed and the face that's on this plate that's underneath. So what you've got to do, what I do, is I just remove the nut altogether and literally put this square face in the vise and just clean it up just with a bit of emery cloth and just clean the face back up. So then that's going to give you a proper connection between the underface here of the bed and the actual square that it's locking on, and it stops that springing and stops it coming loose. But it's basically just a maintenance issue because over time you do get that wear and tear, if you like, that's going to allow you, or not allow you to do it. So yeah, that's all you need to do. Keep it clean, in other words, when you're doing it. And then what will happen is the two faces will connect. You can lock down. It's not going to spring anywhere. It's going to be really solid.
No.
Slide it off, clean the faces up, little bit of emery cloth, and you're not actually cleaning the metal. You're just taking all the build-up of resin off and things like that, and then it'll come back to as it were when it was new, if that makes sense. And them lathes were being used sort of 24/7, and there were a lot of sanding being done. There were a lot of oil finishes being done. And over time, you got the build up. I only had to clean one of them and then it was back to normal. But good question. We've put the chuck on. And what I explained before, because this is a dovetail on there, and we've got a dovetail on the faceplate ring, as you put that on then, it's a safe way of doing it. Because as you open up on the jaws, obviously the dovetail comes in. And what I do is I just back off, just give it a quick rotation to make sure it's seated correctly, and then tighten up. And that'll tighten up on the dovetail and obviously mount the bowl very quickly and very easily. The other advantage of that is you can buy them faceplate rings also separately as a one-off. Now, if you've got 1 or 2 jobs on the go, then it helps because it allows you sort of to rough out all the bowls or 2 or 3 bowls and keep replacing them on the chuck, and they'll come up nice and square. Now, because we've not got the full 14-inch here, just to true it up, we don't have to swivel it round. But my point, what I made earlier, is if we had got a bigger bowl, or you don't want to be sort of leaning over, we can just tilt it to the first notch and come back in. And like I said earlier, all we've done is we've opened the workshop up. If you go to the big, we've opened this workshop up and we're not leaning over. We're actually set here, so it's a lot more comfortable. You're not going to be straining your back or anything like that. If it was the bigger bowl, we'd probably move over and go on to the high torque, low speed, if that makes sense. So you're not going to stop the machine. But because this is just a standard sort of 10-inch, 11-inch bowl, we can lock that off. And all we do, we bring that through. Just make sure it's not catching before we start up. These are safety glasses, by the way. I get a lot of stick for these because they have got the lenses in and they are on the side. So they are safety glasses that I'm using. But they're that comfortable, I end up wearing them all the time. We take it down on the middle pulley. We can just start up, keep the lid shut, and then we can take it to a speed. And as you go up, you'll see this isn't bolted down. It's not got the shot in the legs or anything like that. We just take it to a comfortable speed. Again, tucked in nicely, always on the tool rest. Find the bevel, and we just take that away. And we can just keep cleaning that up until we get the perfect round.
So Craig, I've got another question for you.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether this is a good time or not, and I'm sorry whether you've already covered it, because I've got my head buried in the chat as well, so I might have missed it. But there's a couple of questions on the reverse feature. Did you go through the reverse?
Yeah, we can go through that again, not a problem.
Yeah, one of the questions that came up was that that once you've put it in reverse, it will automatically revert back to a forward position
when you turn it off.
Yeah, and if we just explain why that is, because there was a comment that it's that it would be great if it would stay in reverse, but of course it's a safety feature, isn't it? If you just wanted to cover
that's
that.
That's the idea behind it. We have had that a few times where people have said, yeah, but I want to stay in reverse, and it's awkward to have to press that button every time you do it. I mean, if you go back to the overhead ollie, I've not got this one locked down with a grub screw, but basically you're pressing and holding the reverse. I'll bring it up to the center so you can see it. We've moved it back down. Again, one of the advantages of this is it's quite easy to move around. About right there. So in this position here, this is the reverse button that we press and hold, and you can see that it flashes, then bleeps, and it's in. We start the machine up, it'll go into reverse. When we stop the machine then, if that makes sense, it automatically goes back to forward as a safety issue. Because if you're thinking then you've put something else on, you take that job off that you've been in reverse, you put the next job on, you forget to go back to forward, you set it all up and you start to turn, automatically it's going to try and unthread the chuck or whatever you've got on there. I'm nervous to tell, there's ways around it that you can keep the reverse on if you went on certain websites and things like that. I don't really want to go through it. You can do it, but then it's not something that, I'm not saying we won't advise it, you won't do any damage to your machine, but it's just a safety issue that we ask for, because we have seen every scenario, if that makes sense. So it's just something that we'd rather stick to.
Good. Thanks.
That's all right.
Greg,
Yeah.
could you show how the headstock, when you rotate it, has a few detent positions so you could lock it in
Yes.
90 degrees and so on?
Yeah, of course we can. So when we swivel round, you saw the stump that we got there. But if I take it back and you listen to the 1, we can lock off, 2, we can lock off, 3, we can lock off. We can go all the way around and do a 360. But obviously we're starting to get, you can see the column there. And once we've got it in the position that we want, even if it's not in one of the presets, if it's halfway, we can still lock off. Because I've got one guy, well, I've got a couple of guys actually that they've had issues. One guy's paralyzed down one side and he does a lot of bolt work. And what he does, he has it in this position all the time and has it in reverse and just uses a scraper for turning, and it allows him to do it. So, and obviously if you're wheelchair bound or anything like that, there's access underneath here as well, so you can get down. It's just a matter of working the height right for yourself if you're doing that, or put it on a bench. But again, you can hear the, I don't know if you can hear the presets with it. Is it picking it up on the mic?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Once you've got in the 90, once you lock off on the column, it'll bring it back to the center point to mate up with the tailstock as well. So if we just go back, I'll just finish cleaning that up and I'll put a bit of weight onto it now, because I know Steve was saying how impressed we are with the torque of these. I'm only on the middle, I'm only actually on the middle belt as well. Now we're nearly there. Obviously, we can just increase the speed a little bit if we wanted to, make it even smoother. And we're taking quite an aggressive cut there, but we're not really having any issues at all when we're doing that. Obviously, we've got the 50mm jaw on here with a faceplate ring, but we've got a range of, full range of jaws that are available with the SC3 and SC4 and the cold jaws and everything, that all sort of we can use on both the SC3 and SC4. And again, you'll see them on the website that Steve's got, along with the chucks and the package as well. So, any other questions?
Right. Well, I think you've pretty much covered a good part of it. There was further question on undoing the chuck, and it was just to clarify. It was just to clarify that the bar does not need to pass through the lower stop. It sits behind.
No, it goes through. It goes through the. Let me position this again so we can see it. So it goes through the hand wheel at the back, and then rests in front of the stem of the bar, which is here. So it doesn't go through the bottom stem. It just rests against it.
Yeah, because there was some discussion about having to pass it through the hole in the bottom stop.
No,
doesn't.
No, it just rests against that. And then once it's against that, you saw literally I turned the wood there and it released the chuck with no worry at all.
Yeah,
and that's what happens in the indexing as you lock. My concern is people try and use the indexing to lock it up. It's probably a quicker way of doing it. It's just I don't want the indexing to be damaged at all. That'll sort of, when you need the indexing, the accuracy of the indexing later on, you don't want to have anything that's interfered with it.
No, and that was actually perfect. And one of our friends wrote in the chat actually to thank you for that, Craig, because I think he'd been using the indexing mechanism to help.
Easily done, Mike. Easily done. And as ease, I'll have to hold my hand up, and odd time if it's just something light, and you forget. You just think, oh, that's the quickest way to do it. But when you start getting your heavy work on and like things do tighten up, then please try and do it the proper way. And one thing you'll save on your bearings on your machine, you'll save damaging anything. It just prolongs the life of the machine in general.
Craig, while you're talking about indexing, if you could just, I know you mentioned it briefly, but if you could point out that there's a sight glass in the headstock, maybe show it on the overhead.
Yep. So if you look at the overhead, Ollie, there's a sight glass there. And obviously when I'm stood in front of the machine and the lid's closed, I can't see the indexing. So what I can do, I can just bend down and view that, and I can see the numbers through the sight glass. So it's going to save all your shavings and everything that gets in the headstock, because that's the idea behind it. So you've got the indexing plunger there, which we can operate in and out quite easily. Just lock that down. It allows you to lock that in position, and we can move it out, turn it to, and see now that we're on number 14. Lock that back in, mark off your timber, and away you go. If you do forget, and what I will tell you, and I have done it again, like everybody else will, if you do forget and you leave the indexing in and try to start the machine, it's got an override in it. So you won't actually damage anything. What will happen is there'll be an E04 error come up on the motor, and all you've got to do is turn everything off, disconnect it from the mains, and switch it back on, and it'll get rid of that error. And then just make sure you've released the indexing as well.
So error 4 is a safety mode where if it detects a lot of current and it can't turn the spindle, it shuts down the motor.
Steve, I couldn't have said it any better. Correct. That's what it is. That's what it is.
One further question. Does the e-stop make the machine stop any quicker than the manual stop?
No, exactly the same.
Yep.
We can go for it. So just make sure we're clear. We're running at about 1600. That one's actually did stop a little bit quicker, if I'm being honest. It weren't designed to, but it did do. Yeah, it did do. That actually stopped. If we take that one, and that's more of a wind down on that one. I'll be honest with you, I've not used the e-stop a lot. I mean, it is a safe machine. It's nice to use, but that one definitely did slow it down quicker than the standard. I'll do it again. I'm up at 1800. Yeah, 100%. It does stop it quicker.
All right,
Craig, you're saying the emergency button stopped it quicker.
Yeah.
And I think the original off. I think the reason for that is because when you hit the e-stop, the frequency drive does a controlled slowdown to bring it down at a proper speed, as opposed to the mains, where if you hit it, it just cuts power, and potentially you can unwind a chuck if you're actually
well, that is a big point at the moment, Steve, with lathes, is the everybody loves to turn the machine off and quickly have it inspect the work that they're doing. Mm-hmm. But you put a chuck on there and you put a 21-inch platter on there, and then you're turning away and you've got a quick stop in a couple of seconds. You haven't got it locked down with the grub screw or anything like that. Automatically the spindles stop, but everything wants to carry on because of the weight of the timber. So then you will get the unthreading, and that's what it is. But on this sort of size that we've got here, then you'll be fine on that. And again, they are for emergencies. I'm not saying don't use it, because it doesn't damage the machine at all like that, but They are there for emergency. I've got in the habit now, so I use this machine a lot, of switching the on and off, the basic on and off. And obviously I'm not a production turner, so it doesn't really matter how quickly it's turning on and off for me. I would imagine production turners are obviously a bit more impatient when they're doing that way. But yeah, that one definitely slows it down quicker.
All right. Well, we're right on the hour now, Craig, so your timing is impeccable. There's actually quite a few other technical related questions coming in, which I think probably deserve some...
Right away.
Right, well, there's some specific ones, but what I was going to say is that what we could do is, if there are any sort of technical related questions specific to your own individual question, what we can do is you can send an email to our tech team. And what I'll do is I'll put my email address in the chat, which is miked@recordpower.co.uk. And then we can put you directly in touch with our technical services team. I mean,
Richard. The worth to mention. You got Richard, Steve, and Andrew in technical team. We're all educated on this type of thing, and they'll be more than happy to help you. But if there's anything sort of just quick fire, and I get sort of logged into all the technical ones as well. So if you put them, we'll make sure that we get them answered.
I mean, Bruce is saying, for example, which is some are quite regional specific. Bruce Russon is saying he's in the Midwest, southwest, sorry, of US. The temperature is 45 degrees Celsius. He's saying it's a bit warm in his workshop and was worried about, whether there's specific temperatures that the machine is safe to work in.
Well, I don't know. The advantage of this is on a lot of motors, as you're actually using this machine, there's a draft, if you like, from the impeller, from the fan, that blows across the motor and keeps the electrics cool. And that's designed that way to do that.
Right, excellent.
But them sort of temperatures, I don't think we've ever seen them in Sheffield.
No. No. So when it's sort of specific regional related questions, just send some technical emails. Let's start off by sending them to Mike D, M-I-K-E-D, Mike D @recordpower.co.uk. I'll pass it over to the tech boys, and we'll definitely get some answers for you. Steve, have you got anything else to add?
Also, Mike, don't forget that this live stream will stay on our YouTube channel for years to come. So for those that have questions in the future, you could put them down in the questions box of the YouTube channel, of the YouTube stream here, and we can answer them in the future.
Perfect.
Right down in the description box. People can reply and ask questions. We follow all of the questions that come to us, and we can answer them there in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so should we wrap up the session? We're dead on.
Just want to say it's been really enjoyable, and thanks everybody for coming, really, and some nice questions. And obviously, if you don't ask, you don't get to see it. But obviously, this is one of the first ones we've done in conjunction with Steve in New York. Be nice to do a few other things. We've got the chucks, like you say, and other items that we can look at, the canvac and things like that. So please get in touch with Steve if there's anything you're interested in, and I'm sure we'll be able to arrange something else in the future.
Absolutely. We'll continue these. We wanted to focus on one machine at a time, and we'll continue to do this. I think it was incredibly successful and helpful. I learned a lot myself, Craig. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who's here today and may watch in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. And on that note, we'll run out. There's a video to come all around the Herald, and we'll see you all again next time. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Cheers.